Hello, my name is Takako Haggerty. I'm a PhD candidate of the Queensland University of Technology in Australia. In my PhD project, I have been exploring a Japanese tradition of Kuchishoga as an intercultural music pedagogy for people with vision impairment and an intellectual disability. Now, I'm a koto player. Now, koto is a Japanese zither, originally came from China, but 7th century to Japan. Now, koto has a really interesting history from early 1600. Koto has been historically reserved for the people with a vision impairment for 300 years. Now, that's a very long time. And before and during this time, people developed this particular pedagogy called Kuchishoga. Now, what is a Kuchishoga? In one word, it's an oral tradition of koto music. It's a singing notation. We use the onomatopoeic syllables, which is mimicking sound words based on the Japanese language. I put some of the example here. If you look at the Western notation, and you can see what sort of sound will be pronounced in a Kuchishoga. Now, the Kuchishoga can describe a simple melody, type of a stroke, where it's pitch and rest. Together, it can describe techniques, some of the koto techniques, and articulation and ornamentation in the koto music. Now, some of the researcher has analyzed and described, for example, what sort of consonant and the vowel will describe what sort of sound. However, my research was not attempting to teach Kuchishoga. I was working with the Kuchishoga, but I was going to observe the instinct reaction from students toward this foreign language-based pedagogy. Now, use the Kuchishoga in the context of intercultural communication practice. Now, intercultural communication is a communication between the people from diverse background and culture. Now, multicultural is disparate culture. Cross culture is comparison of the culture or one culture going the others. Now, intercultural communication goes with multiple dimensions. Now, people are willing to try the new things, new environment. People are trying to integrate each other to achieve the one common goal. Now, this concept of intercultural communication's importance has been highlighted by some of the researchers in the music education. Now, they said that learning pathway might be not straightforward. It might be bumpy and frustrating and then disruptive. However, we could result in a student being more confident and also willing to try the new things. Now, my research has been inquiring what are the impacts of intercultural communication practice in a music learning environment on a student with VID, vision impairment, and also intellectual disability, VID. Firstly, I'll look into what sort of pedagogical innovation we can offer from intercultural music education. And secondly, the students are happy or not, and what sort of learning experiences students will have through intercultural music education. From there, I'd like to improve the music learning outcome and also increase opportunity for people with disability. Now, my research field was Narrabeen State Special School, Brisbane, Queensland in Australia. They cater for the student with vision impairment as well as intellectual disability. They cater the students from prep to year 12 age, and it's a small school, 47 students enrolled 2020 semester 2. I had a great opportunity to collect the in-depth and also meaningful data from this school, because this school is really a center of VA community. Not only school exists, they have alternative library, O&M team, therapists and nurses. They're all working together to provide the best possible educational opportunity for students with vision impairment and also intellectual disability. Now, I conducted a koto one-to-one lesson to the 10 students from student 1 to 10. I decided the 6 elements, particularly working with Kuchishoga. Now, student 1 to 4 came from a senior school, aged between 15 and 17. They all had no sight. Notable conditions, student 1 and 3 had severe anxiety. They all had okay gross motor skill. However, some of the students had an involuntary sort of movement, depending on the student. Student 3 was in a selective mute. So he said yes and no. However, to express a complex feeling, he struggled. Now, student 1 and 2 had a perfect pitch. Student 5 to 7 came from middle school, aged between 13 and 14. They all have some sort of sight, some particular spot or some particular angle. And student 6 is completely nonverbal. However, she used an iPad and also the Australian sign language in Australian English quite effectively. Now, student 7 had a cerebral palsy and her left side has been affected. And also she's only one on the wheelchair to move the longer distance. However, she was very famous for her musicality, and yes, she had a perfect pitch. Student 8 to 10 come from prep and also early childhood class, aged between 6 and 8, so they're significantly younger. Student 9 and 10 spoke English as a second language, and student 10 was nonverbal as well. So he used a POD, which is a picture card communication booklet, and also Auslan. Now, I have provided weekly lesson 30 minutes for 2 terms period, which is a 20 weeks period. And from there, I have observed what sort of pedagogical innovation we can make through the intercultural music education. Now, the Kuchishoga has been accepted quite positively and expressed verbally and non-verbally, particularly the area of repetitive practice. It wasn't particularly on the specific notes. However, when we're doing drill work, such as from running a finger through lowest note to highest note with particular techniques, and students use Kuchishoga as a guidance to mimic the sound and show that on the strings. Some of the students also succeeded to play some of the simple melody line by listening to Kuchishoga. Now, some researchers successfully employed the Kuchishoga in various Japanese traditional music teaching in the Japanese-speaking environment. Now, this research found that Kuchishoga showed a similar benefit to students with VED in non-Japanese-speaking environments. So that was pretty significant. Now, another positive impact that the Kuchishoga gave to students' learning outcome in this research is that the Kuchishoga acted as a tool to give a quick and then direct instruction. Now, given the Kuchishoga is the use of words mimicking the desired sound, students could image of the sound quite instantly, and also created extra curiosity to the learning. Now, Kuchishoga based on the foreign language to the students, and it sounded sometimes interesting for the students. So sometimes students giggled, copied, and also created their own Kuchishoga, and that brought extra curiosity to explore some of the interesting sound on the koto. Now, the striking result was the students who actually did not display superior musicality at the beginning of the lesson. They have also improved their skill to play the koto from Kuchishoga. So it was not the prerequisite component to possess the superior orality to get the benefit from this pedagogy, Kuchishoga. On the other hand, not all the students with high oral skill display the projective outcome from learning koto with Kuchishoga. Some of the students with extra condition, which is sometimes anxiety and also the very narrow particular way of doing learning, and those students, those conditions are affecting these students, and that hindered their productivity and their learning outcome from Kuchishoga. So what sort of learning experiences students had through the intercultural music education? Were they happy or what? Now, I had a quite a positive expression, particularly 7 out of 10 students showed a quite high positivity towards their learning experience. To compare with that, 2 students showed a little bit low positivity, and 1 student stated a bit difficult to stay in a new environment. Now, I had 3 distinctive elements to impact the students' positivity toward their learning experience. First of all is the anxiety, and second, motivation. Third, I have in the next slide, which is intercultural communication practice. Now, impact of anxiety was a negative impact. The student 1 and 3, such as they had a severe anxiety. That anxiety sort of made them to live between excitement and also anxious moment. So they want to go in the music activity, they want to join it, but their body is sort of stopping them to be more more adventurous toward the learning activities. So I tried my best to reduce those anxiety by familiarization with the learning environment and also including a familiar contents in the learning. Now, some of the milder and the moderate anxious students overcame from the effort I made. However, some of the severe anxious students remained impacted quite significantly by this anxiety. Now, motivation was another element to impact. Three different types of motivation. Initial motivation is before they join in this experience. The students had an initial motivation. Did they understand properly what they're putting themselves in, what sort of things they're dealing with? If the students show their maturity to understand and also knowing what's going on, and then they gave me a assent to join in a project, and then they showed more motivation to their learning experience. To compare with the students, three actually was a selective mute, so he said yes, I will do the Koto lesson, but it's still having a doubt how much he wanted, understood what he's putting himself in, what sort of situation he's going in. So he showed a little bit less positivity to their learning experience. Now, second motivation is quite significant, internal motivation and a positive learning outcome. When the students achieve positive learning outcomes, students show even more motivation and even more positivity toward their learning experience. Student 4 and 5 were not particularly musical student, didn't show much superior oral skills and things like that. However, they're meeting this alternative music learning method encouraged by intercultural music education. And then they goes, oh, I can do this. I've never done in this way, but I could do it. And then that has been recognized by peers and teachers, and then they even their motivation even grow. And then that led to even more positivity to their learning experience. We also have a different exception as well. Students 6 and 7 didn't really improve their musical skill. However, they have a general love of music, and also they had a great appreciation to be in the program. So that kept them, that was big enough for them to keep being positive toward their learning experience. Now, the third element which contributed to provide more positivity to their learning experience is intercultural communication practice. When it's worked very effectively, students showed more positivity to their learning experience. How that happened was bidirectional learning. Not only students learning from teachers, so I was trying very hard to learn about the students. I observed, learn, investigate to plan for the lesson. Now, particularly for the students which were not non-musical students, I conducted a variety of music activities such as singing, clapping hands, moving a body like dancing or playing games, including various instruments. So those activity was seeking for looking for the students' strengths and also knowing about the students. And I also use other sources of information as well, such as the interview and also the consistent talking with their class and teachers, parents, and guardians. And also use this flexible approach a lot. And then I took a lot of non-traditional approach. It is a difficult thing to do as a classical background, traditional musician, because often there's a particular way to make a music in our music word. But I took a lot of non-traditional traditional approaches, such as employing a familiar song to the students. So not necessarily using a koto repertoire, sometimes pop music or rap music even played on the koto. I did a lot of improvisation. Improvisation is not often, well, it's not very things not the things we often do in a cultural music world, because our focus is preservation of the tradition. However, improvisation gave a great opportunity for me to look for how students listen to the particular sound or pitch, and how do they count the rhythm or feel the beat, or how do they use their body to create some of the sound on the culture. So that was a great way to employ those non-traditional approach. So I even use some Auslan, which is a sign language, integrated in the teaching. Now, the flexible strings of focus in the music learning, which is I flexibly tried to find the students strings. So when I couldn't find the typical music strings, such as oral skill, I flexibly looked into the other students' strings to use in the music learning, such as math or counting skills. When the student doesn't recognize some of the notes, I replace that to the numbers. Sense of space. Some students have a great sense of space. When the person with a vision impairment come in a particular space, sometimes they use the echolocating system, making a sound and listening to the reflection, and also recognize what sort of environment they are in. So if the students have that strings, I enhance that in the music learning. So how to locate this particular strings on the koto, how do you encourage them to reach out the particular bridges and a section of the koto. I use that a lot. Now, body coordination, fine motor skill, how the students can separate the particular fingers, or what sort of shoulder strings or particular arm strings the students have. When you find those strengths, I try to encourage that to use in the music learning. Now, adaptable approach. When the one method didn't work, I tried to seek for another option to encourage better students' learning outcome. This is the result of trying to meet the physical needs. Students have a variety of complex impairment, physical impairment. So I use a lot of adapted posture. Again, as a classical musician, it's sometimes difficult to find to use a different posture, because often the correct posture is only one. However, rather than waiting to students' body force into the koto posture, why don't we use a different posture? So this is probably most common posture in koto music. We try to sit on the cushion, we try to stand. Depending on students' impairment, I try to adapt some of the posture. Procedural adaptation is the same things. When we do something in the music making, in a classical music world, there's often only one way of doing. However, being adaptable, you try to adapt all the procedure to make a music, such as tuning procedure or making a music procedure or learning procedure, to try to adapt those procedures to meet the individual needs. Now, I also took an adaptable approach to cope with behavioral challenges. So I have sometimes adapted the way of guiding a student. So verbal communication method, it's depending on how you communicate with the students. By learning about the students, you come across the best possible verbal communication method. Twist of talk, a modification of guiding, help the students to be very positive in their learning experience. And also classroom setting. I have adapted a classroom setting according to the individual needs, which change day to day. Some of the students who are distracted and also tentative, I try to set the various activities, working station for the better engagement, and also making up the best routine in the classroom. So summarizing this, students' positivity to their learning experience grow if the student's anxiety is less or low managed, and if the motivation exists or stimulated by improving their musicality, and also intercultural communication practice effectively work toward the students' learning experience by doing it bi-directional music learning, flexible approach, and also adaptable approach. Now, intercultural music education can provide educational personal benefit, and also intercultural communication practice can be a vital element to create a positive learning experience. Now, building a bridge between the people from diverse background and a community, and also culture, and also with and without the disability. we can use intercultural music education. We can enhance to make those bridge stronger and better with using intercultural music education. Thank you very much for listening, and I'd like to hear any questions or opinions. And also, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my study and work. Thank you very much.